Good day. Today we're going to focus on creating blocks, attributes, and external references, otherwise known as XREFs. Blocks and attributes go together. So an attribute is the ability to save data along with a block object. And then later that data could be extracted into a spreadsheet and used for tabulation purposes about a drawing. Kind of like a mini database associated with the drawing. And yes, you could actually use Microsoft Access and DBase and other database, FoxPro database tools and link that information into your drawing environment. That is a possibility to do. We're not going to get into that in this particular video, but I just want to make sure that you understood that the advanced side of the fence with blocks and attributes is to actually use a database tool and link the data to your drawing. You can also do it with a basic Excel spreadsheet to start off also. But in our case, we're going to use the internal tools that Autodesk provides, which is blocks and attributes. The external reference is another tool that we're actually going to start off working with before we even get into the block and attribute. We may also throw some other bonus items in depending upon how long this video runs. So here's the vision today. Today we're going to create a plate and utensils to go with the plate. And everybody's familiar with the basic fork, knife, spoon, but we're also going to add the super utensil of a spork, S-P-O-R-K, a spork. If you're not sure what that is, Google it. There's actually patents on the design of sporks. So we're also going to create a spork. So where we're going to begin today is creating a plate. But we're not going to just do a simple circular plate. What we're going to do is an octagon-based plate. And so to create an octagon, we're going to choose under the rectangle, there is a command called Polygon. So we're going to choose Polygon. The first thing that it asks is how many sides is the polygon. Well, our plate is going to be an octagon, which is an 8-sided object. So I'll type 8, hit enter. It's going to ask me where the center is. And I'm just going to go ahead and pick the center on the screen. And then it's going to ask me, is it going to be inscribed inside the circle or circumscribed about the circle? The way to think of this is that inscribed is inside. So the polygon distance is from the center of the polygon to the point of the polygon. Circumscribed is that the circle is inside, or the distance is from the center of the polygon to the middle of the side. We're going to use circumscribed because that is much more common than inscribed. So we're going to have to specify a radius here. So how big is a plate? Do we want to do a small plate or a large plate? Well, let's do a medium-sized plate. We're going to go ahead and make this about 4 inches. So it's going to be an 8-inch diameter circle. Notice where the radius value is attached to. It's attached to the midpoint of the segment on the octagon. If we choose to inscribe, it would have been connected from the center point to one of the corners of the polygon. So there's our 8-inch plate. Okay, 4 inches radius on each side. And so now what we're going to do is save this particular item. And where I'm going to save it into a subdirectory that's also going to be the directory that we're going to save our other objects in. But the reason why we're creating this separately is so that way we can utilize it by itself. So we're going to choose the big letter A, go to Save As, and under Save As I'm already in the folder that I'm going to save it in under a blocks folder. And I've got a drawing called a block drawing, which happens to be this drawing. But I'm going to create a brand new drawing. That's why I did a save as. So we're going to call this octagon plate. And we're going to save it as an AutoCAD 2010 drawing. And again, when you're saving work, and if you need to save things in an earlier version, let's say for example you need to strip some of the new features for lasering or for other aspects, you can go ahead and save it under earlier versions. I typically, if I'm going to do something that may or may not have compatibility, I'll always kick it back to Release 14 or AutoCAD 2000. But in our case, AutoCAD 2010 is perfect. We'll hit Save. All right. Go ahead and close this drawing. We do not want to have this drawing open anymore. We want to get rid of it. We're going to close it. So I don't have any other drawings open, so I'm back to my basic desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and hit New. And we're going to use the AutoCAD as our template. And again, we've just opened up a brand new drawing surface. So in this drawing, what we're going to do is create a fork, a knife, and a spoon, and a spork. That's a combination spoon and fork. And so what I need you to do is draw one of these objects. We're not going to worry too much about specific sizes. We're not going to worry too much about the shape. It just has to represent a fork, a knife, a spoon, and a spork. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes here, create it, and we'll come back to you once it's been created. Highlighting the edges so the tines are the same height. I'm going to highlight the bottom so the tines are the same depth. We'll come across, and it may not be exact, but again, the idea is that we can create a very cool looking fork object. And it may not be perfect. You know, one of the tines is not exactly perfect. Can we fix it? Sure, we can grip it, drag it up here to meet the rest of the tines. You know, we can do the same thing on the other one. So it's perfect. Now again, bottom is 100% perfect either, so we're good to go. What we're going to do is create the knife next. Knives are a little bit longer than forks. This one, I'm going to go ahead and create a basic shape. Again, I'm not too concerned with the exact sizing. And I made sure that the two ends ended at the same spot. I'll use the fillet command and pick both linear objects, and it will create a cut end. And there we've got a scalpel-like knife and a spoon. To create the spoon, we're going to use an ellipse, so we're going to use the center-based ellipse. So we'll create a spoon here. Ooh, this is one big spoon. If you want to change that size, you can shrink the size of the spoon. And what you can do is draw a line, if you choose to. And the spoons are typically shorter than the knives and other objects. And then you can just offset this line. It's another really quick way to do this is use the offset tool and just offset this particular line. I'm going to offset at 0.125 each side. Draw a line at the bottom. across the two ends, pick the center, delete it, and then use the trim key, trim tool, select all the objects, right mouse click, trim, trim, trim to create my spoon. And the last object is a spork. So I'm going to copy my spoon, and I'll make a copy of it. So again, copy it, window, right mouse click, pick a base point, move it, pick the second point. And now we're going to add the little spork tines on the top of the spoon. So to do that, I'm going to draw a line. Made sure that the line is definitely bigger than what I need. From the intersection, we're going to draw a fork spline. Come back across the top. Come back across the bottom. Come back across the top. And it kind of locks in based on the angle that I was using. That's the nice advantage of creating using AutoCAD, is that it's got some built-in properties that you can use. Alright, so now I got to trim this up, so I'll pick the outer two lines, right mouse click, pick the top of the spork, and so there we have a spork. Not too hard, just created it. Wow, that actually looks like a really nice spork. Very happy with the spork creation tonight. Okay, so now we've got our utensils. And I'm going to turn off the grid here so you can see them better, but the grid helps us with sizing. We've got our basic 4-tine fork, and by the way, the 4 tines indicate a dinner fork, 3 tines indicate a salad fork, just saying. And then our scalpel-like knife, a spoon, and our super spork that we designed. Okay, so as you can see with our different utensils, what we're going to do is we're going to create an attribute on one of the utensils. We're going to create one of the utensils as a block, another utensil or several utensils as W blocks. And you might be thinking, well, where's all this block and W block and information at? Well, under the Insert Ribbon tab is where we're going to be working primarily with our drawing environment. The Insert tool allows us to bring blocks back into a drawing. Editing attributes and defining attributes. So you define an attribute first, and you need to define the attribute before you create the block. And the attribute, as we talked about before, is the database. So we're going to define an attribute, then we're going to create a block around it. We have the ability to create blocks, but also we have the ability to write a block. What's the difference? When you create a block, the block stays in the current drawing only. So it works really well if you're doing like a window designed for a skyscraper where all the windows are exactly the same. So you're creating the block inside a major drawing. The write block allows you to use it in any drawing. It saves it as a separate drawing file. So you're writing the block information to a separate DWG file, which means you can use it between drawings. So if you're drawing houses and they're all single family homes and you're using a standard 3-foot by 5-foot window, you can copy between them. Same thing goes true for fasteners that you might be using between drawings that will fasten the backs onto speakers or any object that you might be creating. So again, write blocks are used between drawings, create blocks are used within the current drawing only. Let's first define an attribute, and then we can also move on to things like managing attributes, working with blocks in the block editor. Then we've got external references that we'll work with a little bit later. So define an attribute. So our attribute, and if you think of the attribute as kind of like a price tag, like on clothing, there's always a tag on clothing. It typically includes the model of the object you're buying, the color. There's a color code usually there, style code usually. It includes a price tag and a universal product code associated with it. There might be other information about the manufacturer, on that particular tag that's hanging from the garment. Well, that's exactly what we're dealing with here with the attribute definition dialog. Notice that you've got three parts of the attribute. You've got a tag, a prompt, and the default value. Over on the left-hand side, you've got different options associated with attributes. You can make an attribute invisible, so it's kind of like a hidden database. You can make it constant. Well, whatever stays constant except for pi, like in math. Nothing is constant, so very rarely are you going to choose constant. Verify. If we want to verify the input to give us a double check, we can use the verify option. Preset is like default, so if you put nothing in default, then it would actually put in a preset value. So preset and default are very similar. Lock the position, which means the position will be located where you select it. And then multiple lines, which is one of the newer options associated with attributes, because previously you can only put a single line of text. Now you could actually put a paragraph of text in if you need it. So the attributes are becoming more and more flexible for use. The other parts of the attribute dialog deals with the insertion point of the attribute and then the basic text settings, because an attribute is basically a text value. So this particular tag that we're going to do, and by the way, we're going to do the fork here. So we're going to create several attributes. The first one being the model or the manufacturer. So we're going to type in the tag as MFG. Now, if I've got 3 or 4 utensils and I want this to be put into a spreadsheet or extracted out of the spreadsheet, I need to keep the tags consistent between object and other objects. If the next one I put manufacturer and type out MANFACT, then what will happen is that information will be put on a separate line. So the tag has to be consistent between the different values. If you're talking about database schemes, this is the field. So inside the field of the database item, we need to have a consistent field name. The prompt, like the game of Jeopardy, it has to be in the form of a question. Who is the manufacturer? Let me go ahead and capitalize it. It will show up exactly the way that you type it. And the default that we're going to put is IKEA. So this happens to be an IKEA fork. We'll choose OK, and you'll notice that we'll have text attached to our crosshair. Wherever I place this, that's going to become the default spot for the attribute. And this is an attachment point, more or less. So we're attaching it to the drawing near the fork. Attributes should be very near the object that you're actually applying them to, because they need to become part of the block itself. Now, some people use attributes in title blocks. That's a whole nother use of attributes, to allow you to edit the attribute so you can put and edit your title block information. That's very common for that also to be used. Let's go ahead and create another attribute. So we'll define an attribute, and you'll notice that this particular one we're going to go ahead and put in cost, and then we'll put in what is the cost, and I'll put in $4. This is a pretty expensive fork, and I'm going to go ahead and align it below the previous attribute. Notice that it turned off the insertion and text settings because it's going to use the MFG settings for that to happen. And notice that it puts it right under it. So I could have a whole list of different attributes. Manufacturer code, color, style, so on and so forth. For the sake of time, I'm not going to create a whole list of attributes. We're going to leave it at these two. So I'm going to now create this particular fork as a W block. So we're going to create the block. We're going to go under create the block and choose the right block. And the first thing that it wants us to do is the source is going to be objects. We're going to pick a base point. Now this base point is the point of insertion. So when the fork comes back in, how do you want the fork to be attached to the drawing? So we'll pick the point, and I'm going to pick the lower corner here of the handle of the fork. So it brings it out to like 12 or 14 decimal places. Very accurate. Autodesk, or actually AutoCAD, saves to 16 decimal places, which is phenomenal. We're going to select the objects, and it's going to ask us, do we want to retain the object, convert it to a block, which by the way would be a create block, or delete it from the drawing. Okay, and so it's telling us right now that no objects have been selected. I'm going to go ahead and delete the fork from the drawing so it's no longer with us. Now I can also filter objects or quick select objects. I'm just going to go through and just do the standard select. And I'll window around the fork. That's all I'm going to select. What do you do when you're done selecting objects? You always right mouse click or hit the enter key on the keyboard. It tells me that 18 objects have been selected. If your fork has got 35 objects, you are way too detailed, okay, on your fork here. But it's possible. I need to put this particular object in the same block folder, so I'm going to pause. Through the magic of video, I'm going to go ahead and highlight and search where my folder is, and then it'll magically appear here in just a second. Okay, so through that magic, I'm now under my block folder, and notice that our octagon plate is there, which is cool. And I'm going to go ahead and call this fork. And we're going to hit save. And it's going to save it under my whole list of where it's going to be saved. The base unit is inches. This is important. If you pick the base unit as millimeters, and if you remember when we do a units command, it asks us what the insertion units are, what the base insertion units are for the drawing, whether it's inches or millimeters or feet or kilometers. That is used to convert the scale of the object. So if you bring in a millimeters object into an inch drawing, it's going to scale it appropriately, and vice versa. So that's why your insertion units need to be accurate. Okay, the object, you saw a little flash up in the left-hand corner, and then the object went away. What it did is it created the bitmap image of the object, so that way you can see the little icon image when you look at the object with icons. So I'm now going to need to create some additional blocks here. I'm not going to create W blocks. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to do a create block. Now what I'm doing here is we'll make this the knife, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to specify this on screen. Objects I'm going to select, and I'm going to delete the objects when we're done. Again, we're going to select the knife, right mouse click when we're finished. Behavior, is it going to be annotative, which means if I bring it into a layout, is it going to match the layout scale? Is it going to annotate along with the layout scale? Base unit is in inches. It's called the knife. It gives me the little icon image. I need to pick my point. We'll choose OK. I need to pick it. Oops. I'll pick my point right here as my base point, so I took the check mark off, pick my point. We now have our 8 objects. We'll choose OK. Well, that object just went away. All right. Let's write another block here. Do the same thing. Pick our base point on the spoon. Select our objects, and you can see that it's pretty easy to do. Right mouse click. I need to make sure that it's in the right spot. Magically, we updated the path name, and we'll choose OK, and the spoon goes away. And lastly, we're going to right block our spork. This time, we're going to go ahead and define a couple attributes. I'll again define the manufacturer and the cost. So we're going to hit define attribute. Tag is going to be MFG, so it's on the same scale. Who is the manufacturer? And our spork is going to be a $2 spork. The other thing is that your default value has to have the same format as the original MFG. So tag MFG, $2, and we're going to go ahead and locate it. And I'll define a second attribute, and we're going to say cost. Got too excited there, hit the enter key instead of, so I just escaped out of it. So it's going to be cost. Instead of hitting the tab, I hit the enter key. What is the cost? And then the default cost is going to be $2. Uh-oh, I got a problem. I just put the cost under the manufacturer. So what can I do? Well, I'm going to have to edit the attribute. So let's go ahead and edit a single attribute. I'll pick the MFG. And if I double click on it, I can edit the attribute immediately. And this one is also going to be an IKEA edit. So if you mistype it, just double click on it. It's still not inside a block. It's an easy way to accomplish it. You can just double click on it and go from there. Now we're going to go ahead and do a right block with this. It's going to be objects. We're going to select the objects. Excuse me. Pick our base point first. Select our object second. Right mouse click and it goes away. Oh, I need to make sure that it's in the right location. And we'll give it the name of Spork. S-P-O-R-K. So you can see that the fork and the spoon are there. The knife isn't there. Uh-oh, we'll have to work on the knife here in just a second. So the spork has gone away. Now if you remember, we created the knife as a create block and not as a write block, which means we didn't save it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the knife. So I'm going to use the insert command, which is the command that you use to bring objects in. And since we've only created one localized object, and that's the knife, that's the object that it's going to want to insert. The scale, we're going to keep it at 1, so it's going to be a whole scale. We're not going to rotate it, but you could actually take and rotate the knife if you choose to. Block unit is inches, and we'll specify the insertion point on the screen. We'll choose OK. So there's the knife. You can see where the point that I picked as the insertion point, or as the block location point, is now the insertion point. So I'll locate the knife. So what I could do now is create a write block associated with the knife. Now, again, the reason why I choose a write block is because I need to move it from this drawing into my octagon plate drawing. So the only way for us to do that, to move between drawings, is by creating a write block. So again, pick the base point on the object, select the objects, we'll save it as knife, and we'll hit save. And we'll choose OK. So what we've now done is we've created attributes and we've created blocks. Both create blocks, which are good for the single drawing, and W blocks, which are more commonly used throughout multiple drawings. I'm going to go ahead and close this particular drawing, so that way you know that there's no remnants whatsoever of the information that we've been using. So nothing is going to be stored locally within the drawing. We're not going to save it. I'm going to open up a brand new drawing. Again, it's going to be an AutoCAD based. Grid comes up. I'll turn the grid off. This time I'm going to start the process by bringing in an external reference. Now we need to attach an external reference. We insert blocks, we attach external references. And so what's the difference? Well, let's attach the reference first, and then we'll show you what the difference is. So we're going to go ahead and attach the reference. So it's going to ask us where it is, and I'll go ahead and get it. So I've navigated to the point, and we're going to go ahead and attach the reference file of the octagon plate, and we'll hit open. Okay, it brings up and it says that it's the octagon plate. Our scale is going to be 1. We're going to specify the insertion point. Uh-oh, we didn't specify a base point when we created it, did we? We just saved it as a drawing file. Well, if you just save an object as a drawing file like we did in that octagon plate, the insertion point is going to be 0, 0, 0. Just saying. It's important to know that the default insertion point is 0, 0, 0, XYZ as you go forward. It's going to be full path, so we're going to have a full linkage back to the original, and we're not going to rotate it or change any angles. Now, what's this attachment and overlay? If I put more than one of these plates in a drawing, I need to overlay it. The first one is attached, every subsequent one is overlaid. So if you're doing a subdivision with fire hydrants, you can go ahead and attach the first and then overlay the rest. That's the idea, is that we can have different types of fire hydrants in a subdivision, or excuse me, we can have the same fire hydrant in different sections of a subdivision by using the overlay tool. We're going to choose OK. And again, you can see where 0, 0 is. When I go down to 0, 0, it basically puts it right in the center of the screen. I'm going to go ahead and select that 0, 0 point as my, or pretty darn close, as my attachment point. I'll right mouse click and I am finished with my attach. That was it. I just attached the octagon. Now you're thinking, well, what's the deal with this? Why do you want to use attach? Well, when you attach an external reference, you can go back to the original drawing, make changes to it, and then the attached drawing will update. I know it's hard to see, but we're currently in drawing number 4. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. I'm going to open up, excuse me, I'm going to open up the octagon drawing. Okay, I've now opened up the original octagon drawing. You can see that it's called octagon plate.dwg. The other drawing's down here in the lower left-hand corner. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a change to this, save it, and when we open up the other drawing, that change will be there. So under the home, to make it really easy so we see what happens, I'm going to go ahead and make the change here. I'm going to go ahead and create a circle pretty much at the midpoint here. I'm going to create a little circle pattern on this. And so we can array this. And we're going to go ahead and do a polar array. Select the circle. Right mouse click. It's going to want to know the center point of the array. I need to find the center point of the octagon. So I just highlighted the two edges. I didn't pick anything yet. Just highlighted the midpoints of the two octagon locations. And we got, what, 6 circles there? That looks great. So now I just created a pattern with 6 circles. Okay. Let's hit the save button. Hit the save up top. I hit save. I'm going to close the octagon drawing. So octagon plate, I'm going to close. I saved it. I'm going to close it. I'm going to come up and open the octagon attachment. Down in the lower right-hand corner, it says the XREF file has been changed. Do you want to reload it? So it automatically knows that there's been a design change to this. This is why external references are so important when you're working with a team of individuals that may make other changes, is because it will update and gives you the heads up that there's an update coming. So we're going to go ahead and reload it, and you can see what happened. It reloaded it, and now it has the circles on it. Perfect. So that's the advantage of using the XREF, is that it automatically gives you an update once the original file has been changed or modified. We're going to go to the insert. We're going to insert So we're going to insert the fork. We'll choose open. The fork will be there. We'll specify the scale on the screen. We'll choose OK. And notice this time it brought in the attributes along with it. Now it's asking me what's the cost of the fork down there or near my crosshair. $4 is still the cost, and who is the manufacturer? IKEA, and there it is. And instead of having the tags, the data is now being displayed, and the invisible means that I wouldn't see this data. Let's go ahead and insert a knife. Same process. These are inserting blocks. Darn it. Browse. knife open. It says that the block knife references itself. So I've got a circular reference inside the knife that's causing an issue. Let's go ahead and insert the spoon. Let's see if that runs into a problem. Shouldn't. Spoon is here. And we'll insert the spork. Sometimes demos don't always go exactly as planned. So I've got a circular reference, and what it's saying is that the block is referencing itself. And now with the spork, remember we had some attributes, so it's a $2 spork, and again the manufacturer's IKEA on the spork. So for us to fix the knife, I'm going to need to go back and save the knife as a new file to bring it back in. I'm not going to go through the trouble, but you did see that if an object is a circular reference. Now, could I bring it in as an attachment? Yeah. I could actually attach it and say I want to attach the knife. And it's going to attach it as an XREF. But it wouldn't bring it in as a block because it referenced itself, meaning it's the reference of the knife is also saved as the knife, kind of a scenario. And so I can bring it in as an external reference, but I couldn't bring it in as a block. What's the data difference? Well, if I bring it in as an external reference, the data is saved in the original drawing. Remember, it updates automatically. If I bring in a block, it's brought in as the data. So the data of this fork is here inside this drawing. If I explode this, it'll go back to the individual lines that I created. A block creates a group of items, group of entities that you've created as a single object. But if you use the explode, it still has all the data file along with it. If I explode an external reference, by the way, you couldn't do that, but if I were to explode it, there'd be nothing there. This is just a picture of the knife that I can use with it. Okay, so that's the basics of creating blocks and attributes and external references. A couple of other very interesting features. Hyperlinks. I can put a hyperlink on an object. So if I want to hyperlink the fork to IKEA's website to where the fork is located, I can do that. So if I send a file to a customer and they have a little, it's a little globe is what you'll see, a little earth on the object when it's linked to the IKEA website or to any website, to the manufacturer website. When they click on that object, that will then launch a browser window to the page that you have specified or that you've linked it to. So it's kind of a neat feature that within a drawing you could actually have live external hyperlinks out to the web. So the hyperlink tool, one of the really nice features associated with it. Fields are, as we talked in the text video, are basic data items that are stored within the drawing. And so you can create your own fields if you choose to, or you can use the standard fields that are there. Object linked and embed, that's kind of like a super copy command. So like in most of the Windows operating environment, you've got cut, copy, and paste. And the OLE is kind of like a high-end copy and paste. And so it actually knows where it came from and where it's been copied from. So it has a direct link back to the original in case the original changes. And that's what the OLE object is. All right. I can edit the attributes at this point. So if I choose edit attribute and I pick the spork, so you're picking the block of the spork, it tells me that these are the two attributes that are inside the spork, what my text and property options happen to be, and I can edit those. Or I can edit the attribute. I can click on the value and change on the value. So if, let's say it went up to 250. So I can change it to a $2.50 and choose apply. It now will update it to 250 and choose OK. And we've now edited the attribute. again, the attribute edit is used after the block has been inserted. If I were to double click on this, I would just get a block editing environment. That's the block editor. And so if you double click on this, you'll bring up, oh, I take it back. When you double click on the block, it will do the attribute editor. I have to select the block editor to edit a specific block, and in this case I can edit the fork block. I'm now in the block editor, which means I'm editing the block, and there's a whole array of different capabilities within the block editor that I can control and manage. It's kind of like a hybrid drawing editor. We'll close the block editor at this point, but again, that's a whole nother lecture on block editing. There's the basics of how to create it. One last thing before we get going. Autodesk has this really cool environment called Design Center. Now the Design Center is kind of like a database of design tools that are available to you. And they're all stored within the Autodesk environment. As you can see, there's a whole list within AutoCAD. There's a list of different folders that you can work within, and these are folders that you can work with. The point being, though, is that inside some of these folders are sample objects that you can use as blocks. Let me go ahead and find one, and we'll get rolling. So what I did was I went into the English US units, went under Design Center, and you can see that there's a bunch of basic fields under the Design Center. So if I hit that and I highlight the analog integrated circuits, or the textiles, or basic electronics, or CMOS, or electrical power, or fasteners, fasteners metric, fasteners US, home space planning. Let's choose home space planning. Well, in home space planning, there's blocks and there's other settings that we can use for this. So if I double click on the blocks, these are the different blocks that we can use that are part of AutoCAD. And again, I didn't create these. These are created by Autodesk as a database. And these are drag and drop capable. So let's say, for example, we wanted to drag and drop one of these items. And these are true size. So if I drag and drop a table lamp onto my drawing, it's going to drag and drop a table lamp on my drawing surface. So I just grab the table lamp and I'm going to drop it right on my drawing surface. Let me move the dialog out of the way. And again, it works just like a standard block or object. I can pick it, grip it, move it, escape, and that's a table lamp. I could drag and drop a baby grand piano. And again, under the Design Center, under ENUS, under Design Center, these are different block headings. HVAC, house designer items, landscaping, pipe fittings, welding symbols. So these are all available to you at no cost. There's also some dynamic blocks that you can use also. Okay, different call-out bubbles, and this one happens to be annotation and imperial. You can choose civil, architectural, electrical, mechanical. We'll choose mechanical block. Again, different arrowheads, roller bearings, hex head, bolt, imperial. So these are standard, and these are dynamic, which means that there's some editing built in, or some build capabilities built into that dynamic block itself. So this is the Design Center. It's a great tool to use and experiment with. It allows you to easily drag and drop your blocks onto your drawing environment. You can create a folder with all your blocks as a custom folder, or have it as a default or in your history of your Design Center, and then just drag and drop away as you're creating projects. Have a great day.